Thank you all so much for coming to the closing event of Pub 2.0. It's an exhibition about a post-human future, what's going to happen to public house and the public space. And I have the privilege of being here today with Mike McShane, a dear friend and very talented artist, who produced the artwork that was the centerpiece of the thinking behind the exhibition and how the whole show came together and where it began. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to Mike. Mike will introduce you to the work of art, and we'll see it perform, and then we'll have an opportunity to hear from the artist about what makes something like this tick. So here we have Mike McShane. Thank you guys.
So yeah, this is the Carynx. It's a culmination of about 5 years worth of research. It's a kind of chimera of musical instruments and the body, and I'm kind of interested in how you can kind of be a sound artist by accident, basically. I see this as a sculpture, but it's a sound piece. So I think before I explain anything else, we'll play it, and then I can explain some more. It should start once Katya's plugged it in. Yeah, it's come on. It just does that to fuck with people.
So, we built the place. We're close friends with Mike. And Mike said, can I just tinker with something I've been working on for a while? My relationship to Mike is someone I went to school with and I've known intimately ever since. And I've had the privilege of working alongside a bunch of other artists at Collective Ending. Someone, Harrison Pierce, works closely alongside Mike, so I've watched this interchange of technological artwork between the three practices for the past 3 or 4 years. And when Mike said, can I tinker on something here, we were like, that's the best thing we've ever heard. Let's see it, let's hear it, let's watch it happen. And I can't remember how long you had it here for, maybe a week or a day or a few days.
Brought it in for a day.
But from the minute it was here, all of us were completely infatuated with that work of art as something that took us away from the ordinary, took us away from what we'd seen. It was something that was one of a kind and doing something different, which was something that we found rarer and rarer to see in the arts. The minute you left, Vincent came to me, who co-directs the program here, and said, we have to do something with the larynx. We have to do something. And from that minute onward, as we attempted to meet fire regulations, building control, what it takes to manage a charity that's larger than itself, quicker than we could imagine, the only thing that was common ground between us was that when we could launch the following year, the centerpiece, the work that stuck in our mind, the work that we were sat with to begin the program was this one. And for the last 3 months, Vincent has tirelessly worked towards bringing a show together about a post-human future, what makes us uncomfortable, what unnerves us, centered around something we know so familiar as the pub and the public space. So this work has sat with us for the last 3 months and is the center point of this exhibition. It's something that Mike has worked with multiple different approaches on for years and tinkered with, and it's maybe the 5th or 6th iteration of this thing being in a public space, showing itself, presenting itself. So it's a privilege to have witnessed it and heard its oddity. And it's an amazing thing to have in the space, and I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about this multifaceted creation that's your own practice. So without further ado, this is Mike. Thank you all so much for being here. And please tell us more about this crazy thing.
That's sweet of you to say. So I guess I can start with the title. So the piece is called The Carynx, which is a kind of mispronunciation of a carnix and a larynx. So a larynx is what we use to make noises with in our throat. Ooh, and a carnix is an ancient Celtic horn, and I was drawn to it as a kind of idea because I'm really interested in Gothic horror and the way that it is a kind of way of interpreting technological innovation. There's a kind of long history of kind of this relationship to technology and the kind of mythological histories that come out in our imaginations when we think of technology. And also, carnixes are one of the few instruments that have mechanical tongues inside them. So they have a kind of approximation of a human voice, but this huge sound. So it's that kind of mythological creature that's also a technological component. I guess to explain the piece would be, it's a kind of combination of 3 different ideas in a way. One is my kind of obsession with the idea of the voice and kind of how an object can have, whether an object can have its own voice. The kind of one of the key things that I'm interested in is the human urge to empathize with machines and simultaneously to mechanize the relationships that we have with each other. And so in a way, this is a kind of picture of that hypocrisy. That's how I like to see it. And I'm really interested in the idea of a kind of imperfect voice, and the kind of that you can get something you can get a slightly more emotional response to something that sounds a bit silly or a bit kind of broken than if it had a kind of electronic voice that would be very easy to simulate. A key part of my thinking with this machine is every sound that it makes is a direct reflection of its physical composition. So there's no kind of synthetic electronic sound within it. Every part of it that makes a sound is a kind of reflection of its structure. And I've kind of come into making sound through an interest in sculpture. So it's the kind of, I see it as the kind of architecture of sound. And so I can kind of explain the three different parts. So this part here, which creates the kind of bass cello-like sounds, that's actually using a 3D printer. And I love the sounds that 3D printer motors make. And so I spent about a month every evening musically notating every speed of a 3D printer's motor to be able to then be able to play it. A key part of my thinking is every movement of the machine needs to reflect some kind of musical gesture. So I was really interested in the way that when a piston moves across, it's similar to the arm of a cellist when they're playing an instrument. Originally, it was meant to inflate this kind of bagpipe through a valve here. Unfortunately, the valves didn't work, and I kind of created this botched way of filling the lung section, and I kind of really enjoy when chance things happen and you kind of allow not mistakes, but mistakes or problems to kind of increase the interpretation of the work, because now I see it as this kind of botched operation that's midway through completion. And then I kind of was really, really enjoying playing with how the strings of the actual, so these were, I spent a long time reading books on instrument making, but with no knowledge of how to make any sounds, just a kind of interest in the geometry of how the instruments were made. And I really liked the way that these strings, basically, there's no glue holding the thing together, so the actual strings of the sitar bind the machine together, and there's a piston at the back here that expands and contracts the tension on those strings to create different pitches. So it's a kind of way of creating multiple tones at the same time, just through a kind of breath movement almost. However, I'd say humour is a really important part of the work, and I really want people to find humour in it. And when I was trying to work out a way for the sitar strings to be played, I kind of wanted to keep it as crude as possible, because I really like the idea of a kind of T-Rex trying to play a guitar. And I used a finger and a thumb because it was a kind of pun on being all fingers and thumbs when trying to work something out. And so I kind of want to incorporate little kind of jokes and ways for the machine to kind of mock itself or be vulnerable. I think a large part of what I want this machine to do is to kind of approach the fears that we have towards technology, but also to have something that is simultaneously slightly kind of aggressively mechanical in its kind of operation, yet vulnerable and a bit kind of pathetic and kind of, it's not a perfect machine, it's an imperfect machine. And I think that's a really important part of the thinking in the work that I make, is to kind of allow the free play the kind of fear that we have of technology, but then the kind of often the reality of that technology is it's not perfect because it's been made by us, and it kind of is not. Yeah, I'm still trying to work out where I kind of lie on that. And then the voice part itself. So I'm really interested in Mladen Dollar's book about broken voices and how you can kind of, when there's an embodied voice that doesn't quite make sense. So an example, for instance, is birdsong. Birdsong is a really interesting thing because you can tell that there's a logic or a thinking to the song, but you don't understand it. But there's a kind of, it's that tension that I'm really interested in. And then I'd say another really key aspect of the work is to kind of have every part as visible as possible. So it's kind of, there's no illusion to what's happening. And my absolute favourite is when kids have seen this, because if they're in any way interested in electronics, they're like, oh, I know what that is. And it's just like, it's really great to see kids get interested in, like, to have something that's accessible to kids. And for me, if an artwork can entertain kids, then I've kind of succeeded. I'm trying to think of other things.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
The artwork is incredibly complicated. It's in an exhibition of complicated artworks, but it definitely takes center stage. Something really beautiful about what you've just said is its vulnerability, its intimacy. It pokes fun at itself, it's inviting, it's engaging, it's humanistic, it's robotic. You pointed out this piston at the back that controls the tension of the wires. I live with this work now. It's something that I didn't know happened and hadn't acknowledged during its performance. That's a lovely new revelation. In something so complicated, there's endless revelations. You as its maker, as its Frankenstein, if you like, give us its strengths and weaknesses. What's the thing that's been the greatest achievement within this multifaceted, complicated artwork?
Yeah.
And as it's ever changing, as you're ever improving, where is that room for improvement and what are you changing with it next?
Okay. I mean, I would say I'll start with the room for improvement, and that is definitely my coding skills. I tried on the run up to this show to use AI softwares to try and simplify my coding technique, because I'm self-taught at coding. And it basically was like, no, it's too illogical. I'm not going to do that. So I've got to kind of work on my coding skills, I think, as like the main thing that needs to go into these works as I see them moving forward.
So in a literal sense, the sound that the artwork produces needs to be refined, because the coding is a means to an end towards changing its output. And if its output is sound, is that what you're looking to?
No, it's the ability to copy parts of the code from one piece to another. So it's the way I see large parts of the work is as kind of modular parts that I can swap in and out. And a lot of my work, because of the cost of working with animatronics, I have parts that can swap in from one machine to another, so that essentially it's like a lot. Well, for a long time it was lots of parts that I would then assemble for one piece for a show and then take apart and then do the same again.
And for a layman like myself, be literal with that. It's the piston. It's the it's the Arduino computer.
It's all the electromechanical components. So every part of the machine, bar the electromechanical stuff, I've made from scratch. And biggest success is
that's exciting.
The use of airport vacuum bags to make carbon fibre works.
Nice.
Something I never known how to do. And carbon fibre had always been a material I really wanted to work with, because when you're working with animatronics, it's super light, it's super strong and very flexible. But there are real issues with how you get, like the submarine that imploded. If you don't get things right, it can really not work. And because it's quite a caustic material, you don't want to be working into it too much. You want it to kind of work first time, and then you can kind of go on from there. I think the larynx, I am 2 notes shy of a full octave now. It has taken me 4 years to, there's some iterations on here that I think I'll try and get you guys to play later. But each kind of note takes a lot of different, there's kind of all sorts of research that goes into the shape in which the larynx is cast, and I've started using laminating techniques, so you have different silicons of different shore hardnesses layered on top of each other, because that's actually a reflection of how our larynxes work. They're soft on where they contact each other and then get progressively stiffer into the body. So there's kind of, a large part of my work is research into both anatomy and kind of material sciences. And I'm kind of, now that we've moved to Essex, I'm hoping I can actually have some time and space to work on this stuff.
With the work that was, or was before, a collection of things that would come together and be a work and deassemble to be functional again, this work has different futures. Will you continue to tinker with this? Is this something that could ever reach a realized state, or will its elements be recycled into its big brother, or what's to come?
That's a really good question. I think I'm not going to, I think I'm really happy with the kind of incompleteness of this. I think I may strip mechanical parts out of it for use with other things, but nothing that can't easily be swapped back in. I think it's, I'm really satisfied with the imperfectness of it. I want to definitely continue the exploration of the voice, but it's a kind of ongoing process of what do I want it to actually do, and a large part of this why I like this iteration of it so much is I kind of almost see it as though the kind of mechanical piece is playing a tune, and then the embodied silicon piece is trying to sing along with it, and kind of failing at points to manifest that. Well, failing throughout to manifest that, but I like the juxtaposition of those two kind of efforts. And I'm really, really pleased with I'm beginning to develop these large libraries of essentially encoded relations to movement. So what that means is a physical gesture then is equal to a specific coded sequence within a kind of mechanical structure, and then that will produce a specific sound. And it's been really good to be able to then kind of play with those different fragments. Can anyone guess? So when the last part that the machine plays is the tune that the actual piece is based on. Could anyone hear?
I could tell that it was a tune, but I can't figure out what it is.
Okay. Cool. So it's based on the tune Daisy Bell, which was the first synthetic musical sequence that was produced electronically. And it's also, if you've watched 2001 Space Odyssey, when How the Computer Dies, the song that it sings.
We have something that's a machine, we have something that's incredibly humanistic. It pokes fun at itself, it justifies itself, it's learning, it's growing, it has a future. You talk of taking things from it to repurpose for other machines. You talk of its humanistic nature. Do you find your intimate relationship with this sculpture more humanistic or interpersonal to your other relationships with machines such as the toaster or the bottle opener? When you take an object from this machine, is it different from if you were to dismantle the bottle opener? Do you?
For me, no. I think
it's still a machine.
I think, well, because it's
not any more humanistic than a bottle opener, and neither is your relationship to it more complex.
It's more that I would take the components that aren't part of the work itself, if that makes sense. So I also see it as a kind of...
And be literal with that, so you
So like, I could take out the servo motors, these controllers, or the piston component. Actually, probably not. It's more...
Because these things have a utilitarian purpose in another sculpture.
Yeah.
And don't contain the humanistic elements of the sculpture, which you're more reluctant to recycle into other things.
Yeah, well, I see it as a completed artwork, but because of the cost of components, the necessity to be able to swap them and interchange them is useful. I wouldn't change the physical appearance of it in order to make something else, if that makes sense. I wouldn't...
alter it
yeah,
irreparably.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm trying to think of a humanistic relationship to your relationship to the object. And the closest I can get is our ability to give blood. It can give a part of itself.
Yeah.
But then that part of itself is returned.
Because I see this is like the first complete work of a much, much larger body of work. So my aspiration is to have an opera of these, where I basically will have machines that are dancers, machines that are instruments, machines that are far less figurative, machines that are more figurative. I'm interested in those kind of borders. And then to be able to make musical instruments that musicians could play, or make costumes that dancers could perform in, so that then you have a kind of interrelationship of the human performing with the machine, but the tools reflect the objects, and there's a kind of reciprocality to it. I think the key thing that I want from this work and this body of work is for it not to be about the replacement of humans. There's always this fear of technology replacing humanity, and I think what I want to explore about within this work and the kind of larger body of work to come is, rather than more so expressing the fear itself, the emotional state of our relationship to technology, rather than producing machines that could replace musicians, dancers, or anything like that, if that makes sense. And so I think I'm kind of, I wouldn't say that I'm totally emotionally detached from it, and would like cut it up at a moment's notice. But I kind of, the reality of working with lots of expensive components is you can't get loads unless someone buys this. I can't get more components or more money to be able to make more. So it's being able to kind of. I think it's that kind of DIY approach of slowly building. It's kind of like the mentality with which I make my work anyway, where it's this kind of long building of ways of doing things that I can have independence without necessarily having or requiring lots of money. It's a kind of slow, baby step build up.
Absolutely. So if this work's ambition is to be part of an orchestra or a family, would this work hold its own as the centerpiece? Being someone that comes from a background that's less technologically advanced, I'll use the closest thing I have to example. When I rebuild my website, by the time I finished it, my skills at the beginning are negligible and I have to start again, and it's this perpetual cycle. So this work and its future, if it is to become an orchestra, will it take the backstage, or is it the forefather that takes center stage, and what accompanies it would be?
I think it depends. If it was I would want to incorporate, I'd see it more as a time-based thing, so it would be like one scene could be this, but also I think because what I want to do with the orchestras is to play with sensors. So this has no sensors within it. This just performs when you plug it in for a set period of time and then switches off. The other machines that I'm interested in is using sensors to kind of read and activate and be able to play off each other, because I really enjoy the idea of what's the word that they use in jazz for improvisation.
Yeah.
For them to be able to improvise off each other, and for kind of
Internal combustion.
Kind of interrelationships. I think one thing that I was really excited with some of the work that I've made previously with Cat as well was the idea of having a performance where you build a situation with machines in it, and then depending on the kind of shape of the situation or the people, say you had musicians or dancers within that situation, each performance would be entirely original, based dependent on what space it was in. So it's a kind of like what's that word from
random acts,
data? Yeah, no, the site specific.
Yeah,
it's site specific performance, but time specific as well. So I think, I don't know, I guess like you said, I do have an emotional attachment to this, because this is the first time it's kind of like actually come together in a big scale, because for a long time everything that I've made has been about a foot cubed, because that's all I could afford to make. And it was kind of hearing you doing the performance festival, and I was like, I've got to do something big. It made me actually like do it. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Final question from me. This takes the centre stage of the context of this exhibition. We have the privilege of being able to operate in a really alternative way, to work with artists' estates and represented artists alike, and it offers a real creative freedom. What Vincent has done so well is bring together an audience of artists that speak so truly to this work and set themselves aside from a humdrum conventional exhibition. What we see here is, in a really objective way, incredibly contemporary mediums coming together. And the irony is, the oldest artist in the show has made the most painterly work over here, but it does represent random data. When you have such contemporary work alongside something in such a contemporary situation in an art context, how has the work breathed differently to you? How has your perspective changed? What has anything come to light in this context that's different from the context you perceived the work before, especially with such musical undertones and such computer undertones? Here we have a conventional white cube. Although it's a pub has been dragged through it, it still reads in that light.
I mean, I think it's been really interesting. I mean, I really liked the Troika piece, which is a hand axe mounted on top of a silicon wafer, because it spoke the exact same kind of principle that I'm looking at, where it's kind of maybe thousands of years difference between thinking, but the technology relates materially to each other. And I think the one thing that I would say specifically from looking at Lucia Luciano's work, has been the idea of material harmonics, so a kind of resonance. And what I mean by that is that this piece works through the physical properties of material resonance. So each material that it's made from resonates in a specific way to make a kind of rhythmic sound. And what I liked with Lucia Luciano's work is it's all handcrafted, hand-drawn, and it's within this kind of computer binary framework, but because it's so handmade and because of the way that she thinks about or thought about data, it's about that harmonic frequency and rhythm of how that data moves through space. And I think it's that kind of idea of if we live in an information age and all the material that everything is made of is information, if you think like that. Mm-hmm. And what I really like and what I've kind of realised from hanging alongside her work is that every material has its own specific resonance, or every image has its own specific resonance, and there's a kind of musicality to that. And it's that the thing that I really like about music, which has been a kind of accident, is the way that it's a kind of way for us to communicate with each other emotively. And rather than necessarily saying something super specific, it's an emotional communication through sound and through harmonics. And so does that make sense? That's my approach.
It's beautiful and it's eloquent. Which leads us on to all of the wonderful audience we have here today. Thank you all so much for coming. It's brilliant to open up the table to questions from you guys, because this is the most complicated artwork I've ever seen. So I'm sure there's a few budding questions that are literal and philosophical. I'm staring at you, Elizabeth.
Where the fuck do you start? Really? Because I have had the luxury of seeing bits of these bits come
Together
over the years, whether it's been sort of like bits of silicon mould in your kitchen or bits and bobs in your studio, and the privilege of seeing bits and bobs kind of coming together and finally seeing it in its final form. From like a very simplistic approach, like, where are you starting? Are you starting with the armature side? Are you starting from the vocal side? Are you starting from the silicon side? Are you starting from all of these elements? It's so complicated. I'm just like I like mud and mess and stuff, and this is the furthest thing away you can get from mud and mess. Where are you actually starting with the process of creating something as complicated as that?
I guess obsessing over things.
That sounds very much like you, Mike.
Having multiple overlapping obsessions, and kind of I've learnt to just allow them to feed into each other, and I guess I would say that it always starts from a kind of sculptural interest. In that I'm always interested in how materials work as a shape or as a volume, and so I kind of will be interested in how the way this developed, but it's difficult to explain because there's parts of it that were complete accidents. And
yeah, because the form looks very decided and considered from the beginning, but I've got the cheek factor of knowing that it didn't necessarily look like that from the beginning. So it's sort of very like clear, decided.
My studio is a kind of like scrapyard of parts, basically, and I will get very excited about how to make a valve, and then spend a lot of time working out the different materials and shapes that a valve can have. And then they'll sit in a pile for a year, and then I will reconnect them when a specific need for them arises. And it's this kind of, I guess, a giant library. I feel sorry for Kat because she has to deal with me spreading that's my partner. I spread all of my work wherever I can as a kind of thin film of stuff.
Yeah, because you always get like the money shot of form and function coming together.
Yeah.
Right, and that sounds a little bit like, I don't know what better way to describe it.
Yeah, it's always like playing with how something can visually exist, materially exist, and kind of conceptually exist, but not coming to anything decisive for a long time. Everything, like, there is another 2 or 3 machines that probably could exist if I had the time next to this machine, just out of the parts and the thinking that I've been working with already. Which is why I'm kind of excited, because it means that I know the things that I want to do next. It's just how they will manifest, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's definitely not idea equals...
It's not formulaic.
It's not, no, there's no realisation immediate from an idea. That's for sure.
Do we have any other questions for Mike?
Yeah, you were talking earlier about the way I would put it is...
Sorry, you won't hear your question.
Okay.
Forever.
Does that matter? I would describe it as you were talking about defining subroutines for producing a particular tone or a particular gesture, which in turn produces a particular tone or sequence of tones.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, did you ever think about starting from a higher level of abstraction? For example, using an existing standard like MIDI to drive the mechanisms through possibly directly interfacing to the microcontroller or older style MIDI to voltage conversion. So actually starting from a kind of more defined and commonplace, I guess, musical language, or did you want to be driven by the actual timbres that were produced, as with the motor?
That's a really good question, and actually I have, basically the short answer of it is I have no musical experience or background, and also no kind of, a friend of mine, I have had many, two friends of mine I've had many conversations with about using MIDI, and it would simplify the hell out of everything. And I would be interested in using kind of more typical musical ways of controlling electronics. It's just down to, I learnt coding through kind of using it for mechanical systems. Mm-hmm. And so because I've not had any time or funding to learn MIDI or to pay my mates to teach me how to use MIDI, I've just had to use the only system that I know how to use.
It's funny you should say that, because I learnt coding through learning to write music. So it's kind of
the opposite direction.
Yes.
Cool.
So I was immediately thinking of there's that higher level of abstraction that is not necessarily reflected in the output of the machine, because from the perspective of whatever's being driven by the instruction, it doesn't relate to middle C or whatever that MIDI value normally represents. But particularly when you were talking about having an orchestra of machines that might have interactivity, I was thinking, well, that could make that kind of interaction a lot more certainly a lot easier
Yeah.
in terms of coding, because you would be
Yeah,
working
yeah.
at the
Absolutely. I
higher
think it's.
abstract level.
I think for this piece, it's kind of that is something that I would absolutely love to do, and it is very like I would like to use. I still haven't fully begun learning Python properly. My Python skills are pretty poor. I'd say my C++ skills are average at best, and I'm kind of just like mashing stuff to try and get it to work.
That's what we all
And I would like, I think the only reason why I haven't yet approached those systems is because when I'm playing with physical things, I can then create, they kind of add to the library of realizations of experiments, whilst the kind of coding aspects, because it is that level of abstraction, it's hard to have fragments that my mind doesn't understand it well enough to be able to kind of improvise with it or like use it properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's definitely an aspiration. And yeah, if I can get some money.
Do you want
Thanks.
more questions, or do you want me to hand out math pieces?
Ooh, yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Oh, yeah.
I really like the idea that this piece, you know, you were saying about that it might eventually have an older sibling, and by the sounds of it will turn into like an amazing post-human choir situation. But like in your mind, what do you think the kind of next evolution of this artwork might be? Like, do you have something that you kind of really want to realize with the series next?
Oh, the next piece?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yes, absolutely. I'm really interested in, a large aspect of my work, which I haven't really talked about, is an interest in puppetry. And what I'm particularly interested in is, I like obsessing over a specific thing and then finding different ways of manifesting it. And the thing that I found that I'm really excited about is called a jig doll, which is basically an Irish folk instrument, which is a kind of marionette with its strings cut off, and then it's attached by the head over a plank, and you jiggle the plank and it tap dances on the plank. And essentially with this piece I'm kind of happy to park my interest in the voice and kind of stringed sound for at least one piece, and I want to explore percussion and rhythm, and also the kind of gestures of dance. So this is a very static, like it moves, but it's a static object. And I would be interested in how you could have an object that moves more and still produces sound, but there's that kind of explore that relationship with dance and percussion, like tap dance, and what could happen, how that could manifest itself, is what I want to do next. Because then you could have wind, string, and percussion.
Can I hand these things out?
Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to do, let me just show people. So these are different iterations. They're wet because I washed them in the sink. So they are clean, but if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to. Basically, I've made, I have lots of these, and this is the kind of part that the voice comes from within the machine. And what I would be interested in as a first iteration of my wanting to have people perform with the machine is for people to try and play along with the machine using these broken throat parts. So yeah, if anyone wants to have a go, I'd really appreciate it. Go on.
Give us a demo, Mike, so
Oh, right. So to control it, you just blow through one end, but you move the two sides further apart.
We got the last one.
Oh, this is much better.
So they were.
So could we
Anyone who has an instrument,
yeah.
can they please come up to the larynx?
That's sick. What? I love that one.
Yeah, so they have different pitches.
Okay, I'm the microphone for all of the different pitches.
Oops, sorry.
Okay, so every instrument over here.
Huh?
You have to get along with it.
Yeah, well, you can I just want people to play with it because I've not had the opportunity to do this.
Bloody hell. Okay. We don't have as a composer.
I'm so happy.
This one works really It works.
You can stretch it pretty. This is my dream. This is the best. That's so good. I love you so good. all of Kat's godkids and like young cousins have these. Their parents fucking hate me. Like all of my little cousins and Kat's little cousins have these, and then my uncles and aunties fucking hate me because I just give them all this like weird.
Thank you, Mike McShane.
And thank you guys. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. Yeah, no, I've always wanted to have people perform.
You said that before.
And just